In this episode, we are doing a book review of the book Keep Going by Austin Kleon. Get excited because this is Tiny Leaps. Big change. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps. Big changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Gregg Clunis, and in this episode, we are looking at a book I recently finished reading that is by an author I've definitely talked about on this show, Mr. Austin Kleon. He is the author of Steal Like an Artist, which I have talked about constantly in over multiple episodes. So if you're a longtime listener of the show, you're definitely familiar with him. If you are new to the show, then I recommend you check out the first book review I did on him, his book Steal Like an Artist. I believe it was episode 5 of the podcast or episode 4, so check that out. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the book Keep Going, which I recently read. It's his third book, so he has 3. It's Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. So what I want to do with this review is talk about the book itself. So sort of the general concept, my overall rating, my takeaways, all the things that I've sort of learned from it, and of course give my opinion of it. But then I also want to talk about where this fits in to the larger philosophy that he is painting across his 3 books, which I've read all 3 at this point. So this should be super good. Now, if you haven't already, you got to join us over on the YouTube. So if you're listening to this in audio right now, you are only getting half the experience you could be. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Gregg Clunis. While you're there, click subscribe, leave a like on the video, and drop a comment so that I know you're here and we can talk. All right, let's jump into the review. So Keep Going is Austin's 3rd book, technically 4th if you count his guided journal, but it's his 3rd book that essentially focuses on what it takes to be an artist in today's world, what it takes to be creative in today's world. And when we use the term artist and creative in this context, we don't just mean the person that comes to mind, right? We don't mean the painter and the musician and whatever else, right? We also mean the teachers and the people in just regular day-to-day life that have to be creative, have to be unique, have to be interesting, have to be original, have to do something of consequence. So it's not so much what your head might go to when you think artist. It's not just the Leonardo da Vinci's of the world. It's also the everyman, the every woman, the person who just exists in this world. So the book is really for anyone who tries to live their life in a way that is intentional. Someone who tries to own their purpose, own their existence, own the things that they are working on. And I would recommend it to those people. Now, the overall concept of the book is fairly straightforward. It's called Keep Going. It is about how to keep going. If his first book was Steal Like an Artist, which is about the creative process, how does creativity happen? His second book, Share Your Work, was about how that creativity gets discovered. And finally, in Keep Going, he tells us how that creativity gets sustained, because ultimately it's not about the end product, right? We think of art, we think of creativity, and what comes to mind are colorful images of the product, the result, the painting that's hanging in the gallery, the piece of music that you're listening to, the poem that is being spoken. But in truth and in fact, art, creativity is actually in the black and white. It's in the boring segments. It's in the day-to-day grind, the showing up, the ritual. One of the things this book really helped me wrap my head around is that art isn't created in color. It's only seen in color. Art is created in black and white. Art is created in the boring moments, the thing that is completely opposite to what you probably imagine as art and creativity. This book is really about the day-to-day grind that you must go through in order to create color, in order to present something that may or may not actually have any value, but it has value to you. In it, he talks about things like daily routines, making lists. He talks about organizing yourself. He talks about shutting down from social media and disconnecting. He talks about so many of the things that allow us to function on a day-to-day basis. And at its core, that's really what the book helps with. It's how do you function as an artist, as a creative, as someone who is trying to take control of their life? How do you function in a world that is increasingly difficult to stay afloat in? That's what the book is about. Now, as far as length, I actually think it's really nice. So it's shorter than I want it to be. It's the kind of book that has, in my opinion, the appropriate length, meaning if it went on longer, I probably would feel like this is too long. But because it doesn't, I'm left feeling like, oh, I want more, right? I want to hear more of what Austin has to say. I want to tackle these problems deeper. I want to be able to explore more of the black and white, the boring parts of art. And the book, in its length, does not really allow that. It's fairly small. It's a coffee table book. But in those pages are packed sort of endless nuggets, right? You walk away learning something or finding a quote that helps you or reframing the way you view something. And that's really the brilliance of the book. It's not just about the words on the page, it's also the art within it. It's the creativity in how it's put together. It's the little doodles that he puts into it. It's the quotes that he chooses. It's the conversations that he highlights. It's all of those little pieces that come together to create something that is wholly unique. And the length makes sense for what it is that he created. Now, would I love to see a regular quote-unquote book that maybe is a little longer that goes into some of these topics? Absolutely. But I would want that in addition to this. I would not want that instead of this. So I actually think the length is perfect. It makes it feel achievable, makes it feel like something you can pick up and read or something you can flip to a random page and get value from. And there's just frankly not enough books like that. So overall, I would give this book a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason it's not a 5 is because I tend not to really give those out. However, it is near perfect. It is something that feels like a light read, feels achievable, feels like something you can pick up and get into or pick up and put down and still gain value from. And quite frankly, it does a really good job redefining what we think of as creativity, redefining what we think of as art. Because I think for most of us, art is the color, art is the painting, the music, the poem. But really, art is, as this book argues, the boring moments. It's the routine. It's the lifestyle. It's the lists. It's the things that get you to create, get you to build and make and do. That's what the actual art is. What we see is just the presentation of that art. So I hope this episode was helpful. I do highly recommend picking up the book if you are on the fence. If you haven't heard of Austin, I recommend picking up all 3 books. Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. With that said, I've been Gregg Clunis. Be sure to click subscribe wherever you are tuning in. And if you haven't already, join us over on YouTube at youtube.com/Gregg Clunis. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember that all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take every day.